Hi, I am Clements, and today I want to do a video on a method for doing fake stained glass with wood and resin. Now, I'm not really going to focus on making the wooden part. I made this on my laser. It's actually made with balsa wood, so it's extremely fragile. Thankfully, once the resin's poured in, it becomes quite a bit more substantial, but now why would I make it out of such a ridiculously fragile wood? Well, it's something my laser can actually cut. I just have a cheap $500 Chinese laser, so this is a material that the laser can actually get through. And this is actually a little over 3 mil thick, which is asking a lot, but the laser was able to cut through it quite nicely. There's no way I could cut through like a piece of plywood, this thick. Pretty much the thickest plywood I can actually get through is this stuff, and this isn't even 2 millimeters in thickness, and it takes about 16 passes to actually finally cut through. So I can do it, but with the balsa wood I can do a lot less passes and quite thicker material. So it's kind of my new secret weapon. That plus an issue I always have with my laser is it never cuts all the way through. Even with pass after pass, I always have issues with it never making it all the way through the other side. Until today, when I decided to just try making the entire top of it black, and it cut through flawlessly. Every single piece cut out perfectly. I didn't have a single one where I had to go in with a knife and chop it out. And it makes sense. I mean, I've kind of always known that, but it's just basically a high-powered laser pointer. So it's light. It's not like a tube laser or anything. So when the light hits a light colored surface, it's kind of bouncing and I'm losing some of the power of that laser. So if I make it dark, black, that light gets absorbed into the material and I get a flawless cut all the way through. So a dark surface combined with balsa wood is really opening up a lot of possibilities for me and my laser. So I'm pretty excited about that. Now these actually I did cut just normally on white wood. I managed to get all the way through just fine. And then I stained it after the fact to get a nice brown color on there. This one was another test that I did, and I actually just sharpied it after the fact, which looks okay, except some of the resin was on top of the wood, so there's kind of different textures. So I'm not too pleased with it. I really like it, but I don't know. I mean, the back kind of looks better. Might be worth sanding it down, trying to redo it, but it's really risky. So, and on the topic of staining these, when I wanted to set them down to dry, I actually used one of my bench dogs, one of these quad ones I made, and I wrapped some fishing line around the top of it, and that gives me a really minimal contact method to hold that. So I'm really pleased with that. That worked really well. Anyway, what I really want to focus on is getting the resin into the wood and the method for doing that. Now, Peter Brown did a video on this several years ago, and he just used packing tape. He basically just put packing tape on the back of his wood cutout and then poured in the resin, and that worked just fine for him. Unfortunately for me, it didn't work. It might be the resin I was using. I'm just using this stuff. You can just get it at Michael's. Relatively cheap. It stayed sticky on me. The tape didn't peel off that well. Another issue I had was I thought that trying to put the tape down onto my cutout wasn't going to work that well. I had the brilliant idea to use spray adhesive and put spray adhesive down on a board, and then I stuck the tape down to the spray adhesive. So I had a nice tight surface with the tape, and then I just stuck my image down on the tape. Now, in theory, that's a good idea, except when it comes time to remove this, there's no way to do it. I had to kind of pry it off, so now it's all warped and the resin cracked on me as I was trying to get it off. So that was just all around an ill-advised idea. And plus it didn't even work. The whole point of it was to keep the tape nice and flat, and it's still wrinkled on me. So that it's really not a good surface. So probably cheap tape, weird resin, having the tape fixed and rigid, all of that kind of just made this a fail. I mean, as a first test, I was very pleased with it. I mean, it worked perfectly. The resin didn't leak. It looked exactly the way I wanted it to. I just needed to work on my method for sealing it and then, getting it off. So for this one, I thought, well, let me try painter's tape instead. And instead of gluing the tape to my surface, it's a nicer, flatter surface here, I'm just going to tape the tape to my flat surface. So put it down on one end, pull it nice and tight, tape down the other end. So now I have a nice, flat, level, taut piece of tape. And now I can stick my wooden part down on and get that nice and pressed down. Now this way, when it comes time to peel the tape off, I can actually just take this whole thing off the board and I'll be able to peel the tape right off. So that works so much better. So this solved my issue of actually being able to remove it from the tape without cracking and breaking it. But I still didn't want to risk it staying sticky. I still don't know how the resin is going to react to being poured on top of the tape. So my second solution was a clear coat. So this step does a few things for us. For one, it's sealing up the tape, so now we're pouring our resin onto just a clean surface, so it should cure and shouldn't come out sticky, assuming the clear coat doesn't dry weird. Spoiler, it doesn't, it works perfectly. We're also sealing up all of the edges. So that's going to help prevent the resin from leaking out underneath into other pockets or coming out. And then we're also just getting a nice finish on the wood. So yeah, I really think the clear coat is kind of the secret ingredient for doing this. So we're just going to let this dry, and we'll come back and we'll pour some resin in there and then get them peeled off and see how they come out. All right, that clear coat has dried. It's all nice and smooth and the tape's no longer sticky. So we can go ahead and start pouring some resin. Now for this, I only need a very small amount of resin, and that can actually be a little bit challenging, mixing up just only a few tablespoons at a time. One thing I like to do is make a master cup. This makes it really easy to measure out the correct amount of resin. The resin I'm using is mixed by volume with a 1-to-1 ratio. And so these two lines actually represent 1 tablespoon and 2 tablespoons. Now, you might be wondering how this could be 1 tablespoon if it's up so much higher. But what we actually do is take a second cup and put it in. And now I can fill it up to there, which is 1 tablespoon inside the second cup, and then to there with part B, which is 2 tablespoons. So then I can take my measuring cup, put that aside, and now I have 2 tablespoons of resin in my cup. My measuring cup is usable again for the next time, over and over and over again, as long as you don't mess up and use the measuring cup. That's why it says, don't fill, master, warning, because I've done that a few times. And then of course, when you do that, your measurements are way off. You have way too much of one part than the other. But when you do it right, it makes it really easy, really repeatable, really fast to mix up a lot of really small batches. And this works well with large batches too. I really like the method of using a cup and a cup, and then you just have your measurements with that offset for however much gap there is in your stacked cups. So I think that's a really cool method. So let's go ahead and make up our first batch of resin. There's part A and part B. And we can set our master cup aside and mix that on up. Now with this first batch, I want to actually do white for the stem and these feathers up here, and then a bit of a gradient from white to red to darker red. And for that, I'm just going to use a little bit of acrylic paint. ahead and mix that on in there. All right, there we go. Nice white resin. All right, so I'm just gonna fill up a syringe with some resin. And then just start filling in all of these areas. I'm gonna do my best not to get it on the surface, but it's a little unavoidable in some of these spots. So you can probably see that even 2 tablespoons of resin is going to be way more than I need. I need to get slightly bigger needles, like just actual resin needles. I mean, these are literal hypodermic needles, so they're a little bit too tiny. It's a lot of effort to push the resin through there. That looks pretty good. And now we're not done with the white just yet. So I want a little bit more here. All right, I'm going to set the white aside for now. And let's mix up our second batch. Now with how clear it is, it's actually easier to look from the inside of the cup out, because it's a little hard to see through, but you can, but either way. We'll mix that on up. And a little bit of red. And some yellow. I'm just going to use my same white syringe. Some of that in there. All right, now I'm going to add a bit more red, get that a bit darker. And then we're going to make it even darker, try and go almost brown. So this is the other trick with the small batch of resin. So like if you're doing like blues and greens, you can try and use the same batch of resin, do your blues first, and then add some yellow to the blue to get your green. So try and plan out your colors in accordance to how you can make them using all the same batch of resin. So a little bit of yellow. That was way too much green. But that's okay, because we were going to need black eventually for the stripe here, so we'll do that now. Let's see if we can take the white and color that. Nah, I'm not liking that. So we'll just make up one more batch to finish these off. And now what I should have done the first time is just dab a little bit of the green on a stick to mix that in there. Really creep up on that darker color. Actually, I think, yeah, that's right about where I want to be. Now, just mix these in a bit more, try and get that gradient going. All right, I'd say that is pretty good. And now very carefully with a torch, we can pop some of those bubbles. That's about all there is to it. Of course, we have quite a bit of leftover resin, unfortunately. I always like to have some kind of mold on hand, just like these silicone ice cube trays. We can just go ahead and dump that in there, just so we're not wasting it, even though we're still absolutely wasting it, because who needs a brown resin dinosaur? There we go. But yeah, we'll check back in once that's all cured, and then we'll see how well the tape held up, see if we had any leaks, and if it peels off okay. All right, it's the next day. This should be nice and cured. So now we should be able to just peel the tape off the board, and then with any luck, almost all of it at once. There we go. Tape peels off really nicely. Not at all sticky. We didn't have any kind of leaking. That came out really, really nice. And was that from, I think I just got food coloring from, yep. So, oh well. Well, there they are, and these came out just absolutely fantastic. These look so good. I'm really happy with them. The finish is really nice. We didn't have any leaks at all. The resin cured perfectly. The tape didn't leave behind any kind of residue. It just peeled off perfectly clean. So all of those methods combined gave us just an absolutely awesome end result. You could throw on another clear coat on top just to kind of even out the wood finish where some of the resin got on top. But either way, I think these are so cool. Oh yeah, of course. We got to check in on our overflow dinos. There we go. Those came out just fine too. So, but yeah, there you have it. So again, I think that the blue tape, the painter's tape, and the clear coat is really the best way to prep your frame for the resin pour. It works so well. It does leave a bit of a kind of satin finish on the back, but again, if you wanted to coat this with resin again or just do a clear coat, you could bring that back up to a shine. I think this texture actually looks kind of nice. It's kind of cool, kind of a frosted glass look. So, but yeah, either way, these are just so cool. I'm really looking forward to being able to just make a whole bunch more. It's really exciting to have this in my arsenal as a thing that I know how to do now. There's just so many possibilities of stuff you can do with this technique. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But my sincere thank you for watching. Once again, I am Nick D. Clements. If you're wondering, Nick is short for Nicholas, and the D stands for dinosaur. Anyway, I'm off to make something else.